We continue developing our web application, starting with creating config class, which will be responsible for storing settings such as database connection parameters. We are going to add config class PHP to the lib directory and to create config class in it. In this config class, we create static protected variable settings, which appears to be associative array. With reference to this, application settings will be represented in the form of key value. In order to receive value stored in settings, we create static function get, parameter of which is variable key, that is specified key. For example, the database user line may be the key, and login, which is used for database connection, may be the value. Function returns value from settings array of the given class if it really exists. Otherwise, null is returned. The next function is set, which has two parameters, key and corresponding value. In body function, value is assigned to the settings array element with specified key. As a result, application settings may be set and received. At this stage, our work on config class is completed, and now we are going to use it. The next step is creating request dispatcher or router, in other words. Creating router class PHP file, we locate it in the lib directory. And don't forget that lib directory stores code of the general application classes. And now let's create router class. Router class is responsible for request parsing to our application, and its mission is parsing URI in order to receive controller, action, and other parameters. And so, we create corresponding attributes of the given class with protected access level. The first attribute is URI, the second is controller, the third action, and the last is parameters, which appears to be parameter array. And for now, we are going to create getters to each of these attributes in order to get access to them in application. This is the best practice using getters and setters in classes. In order to use this class, we need to create its constructor. Constructor will receive URI parameter, that is request line. At the same time, URI will be parsed, and controller, action, and other parameters will be received. In this lecture, our task is using basic classes, that's why we output test line. The real URI parsing of this class will be realized in the next lecture. Earlier, we have already created config class, and now it's high time for us to use it while working on settings. For this purpose, we create config PHP file in the config directory. This is the general configuration file of our application. It stores various parameters such as name of site or parameters of database connection. But still, we need to turn on config class PHP in order to have the access in config PHP file to the config class defined in another file. It could be realized with the help of require once function, but it would be absolutely wrong making a score of require once calls regarding all the connected files. It relates to all the rest of files of the project. In order to use tens of classes, functions, and constants defined in various files of the whole project, we need to use standard autoload function. It appears automatically when the usage of undefined class occurs in code. We create such a function in the init.php file. The init.php file will be turned on in the index.php and will be responsible for the access of the rest of project code to site settings and class autoload. First of all, we turn on config.php in the init.php file. The config.php path would be formed with the help of root constant, which denotes the given directory in this case. Then the another part of file path is added. Now it's time for us to define autoload function. While typing it, you should take into account that it starts with 2 underscores. As a parameter, it undertakes class name to which request is directed. All the classes of our project may be located in one of 3 directories: in lib directory, in controllers directory, and in modules directory. Each of them has its own rules of creating file name, that's why we need to create variables which will contain possible class names of each directory. For instance, classes which are located in lib directory must be also located in files, class name of which is in lowercase, and then goes .class.php. Controller classes must be represented at the class name .controller.php. For page controller file, it must be pages controller PHP. The utmost simple name will be given to modules, while with module class of the page must be just called page PHP. All the file names must be in lowercase. The rules of giving names to files and classes must be clearly defined within the framework of the project. And the next step, which we are going to realize, is checking whether files of the defined path exist. If they exist, they must be turned on with the help of require_once function. Let's check path with the help of fileExists function in rotation. If no file is found, we need to throw exception. As a result, we have created practical mechanism of working on classes in our application. Such a scheme of automatic connection of classes is a classical one for the most MVC frameworks. Since we can already use config class in the config PHP file, let's create some settings of the site. It may be the name of site, for instance. We use static set action of the config class. As for key, we use site name, and as for value, the line your site name. Then we start working on index.php file. Since index.php file is single entry point of our application, it must include initialization file, that is init.php, and direct request to request dispatcher. Request URI appears to be the parameter of router class constructor, that is the real request to web application. Let's check whether this code works. For this purpose, we open localhost in browser. As we can see, all the requests which must be redirected to index.php as well as static content are being processed correctly. As a result, all the requests like controller action are redirected to index.php, which in turn create the exemplar of router class. Right now, constructor of this class is outputting the test line in which the redirected request is given. In the next lecture, we will write the code of router class, which receives controller action and other parameters out from the request. We will also add multi-language support to the project.